There are places that seem to carry the weight of tragedy, where the walls echo with the lives once lived and the air feels thick with something darker. One such place stands as a monument to both despair and mystery, the Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Louisville, Kentucky. And if the whispered tales are to be believed, it is one of the most haunted buildings in the United States. But before the stories of ghostly apparitions and shadow figures, there was history. Waverly Hills was constructed in 1910, a time when tuberculosis was known as the White Plague. The disease swept through the nation, claiming thousands of lives and sparing no community. Louisville, Kentucky, with its warm, humid climate, became a hotspot for outbreaks. And so, the Waverly Hills Sanatorium was born. Its original purpose: to isolate and treat tuberculosis patients in an era when treatment often meant little more than fresh air and sunlight. The sanatorium grew quickly, expanding to accommodate more than 400 patients at the height of the tuberculosis epidemic. It was a beacon of hope for those suffering from the disease, but that hope came with a grim reality. Modern antibiotics were still decades away, and most who entered Waverly Hills never left alive. The treatments of the time were experimental, invasive, and in hindsight, barbaric. Lungs were collapsed in the hope of resting them. Ribs were surgically removed to allow the lungs to expand better. Patients were subjected to hours of exposure to freezing conditions, their bodies literally pushed to the brink, all in the name of science. For many, these so-called treatments only hastened their deaths. It's said that tens of thousands died within Waverly's walls, and for the dead, there was no ceremonial farewell. In an effort to keep morale high among the patients, their bodies were discreetly moved using what became infamously known as the death tunnel, a 500-foot-long sloping passageway that led from the main building to the outside world. Corpses were slid down this tunnel on gurneys, loaded onto wagons, and taken away without ever being seen by those still clinging to life. The practice kept the other patients from losing hope, but it also added to the macabre mystique of the sanatorium. By 1961, the battle against tuberculosis was finally being won, and Waverly Hills shut its doors as a treatment center. However, it wasn't long before the building found a new purpose, this time as a geriatric hospital. What should have been a place of care quickly became notorious for tales of neglect and abuse. Patients were reportedly left to wander the halls at night, uncared for and often forgotten. By the early 1980s, Waverly Hills was closed for good, left to decay atop its lonely hill. But Waverly Hills did not stay silent. Visitors today describe a palpable sense of unease even before entering the building. But once inside, that's where the real stories begin. Shadowy figures dart across the hallways, distant whispers call out in empty rooms, doors slam on their own, and cold spots creep across the skin like unseen hands. Ghost hunters, skeptics, and the curious have all come to Waverly, and many leave convinced they've encountered there's something. One of the most infamous tales concerns room 502, located in the upper floors of the sanatorium. According to legend, a head nurse hanged herself in this room sometime in the 1920s after becoming pregnant and unmarried, a scandal during that time period. The father of her child, the story says, was a married doctor at the sanatorium, and out of fear and shame, she ended her life. But the tragedy did not stop there. Another account claims that sometime later, a second nurse jumped to her death from the same room's window. Today, those who visit often feel compelled to avoid room 502 entirely. Those who do enter report oppressive feelings of despair, shadows moving when no one else is there, and even faint voices begging them to leave. Then there are the shadow figures, seen frequently in the hallways and especially notorious in the death tunnel. Tour guides and paranormal investigators recount seeing human-shaped shadows walking, crawling, or darting across the walls, as if the residual energy of the building's past residents clings to its every surface. Perhaps the most famous apparition of all is simply known as Timmy. It is said that Timmy was a young boy who succumbed to tuberculosis while at Waverly Hills. Today, visitors often report seeing a small child wandering the hallways, rolling a ball, or giggling softly in the distance. One particularly chilling account describes how investigators brought a ball with them, a simple toy meant to spark interaction. They left it in the middle of a corridor and watched in awe and terror as it began to roll, all by itself. Other reports include disembodied screams echoing down empty hallways, the sound of gurney wheels squeaking along the floors, and even ghostly nurses standing in windows as though still tending to patients long gone. The apparitions range from full-body encounters that seem almost lifelike to faint, hazy forms that vanish the moment they're noticed. And then there are the personal accounts. Hundreds, if not thousands of them. Some people report feeling physically touched by unseen hands, as though the spirits themselves are reaching out. Others describe overwhelming nausea, sudden headaches, or feelings of being watched. It is not uncommon to hear of skeptics entering Waverly Hills only to leave firmly convinced of its haunting. Yet, with all these chilling legends and first-hand stories, there are still those who question whether Waverly Hills is truly haunted or if its reputation simply preys on the power of suggestion. After all, the building's history is undeniably tragic, and it is human nature to assign meaning to the unexplained. Others, however, argue that the sheer concentration of death and suffering within Waverly's walls, combined with the emotional energy of its patients, created a perfect storm for a haunting. Today, Waverly Hills Sanatorium serves as both a historical monument and a hotspot for paranormal investigations. Its owners welcome visitors for ghost tours, investigations, and even Halloween events, all while preserving the building's legacy. But whether you believe in spirits or not, one thing is certain: Waverly Hills leaves an impression. It is a place where history stretches its cold fingers into the present, where the line between the living and the dead blurs. And so Waverly Hills Sanatorium remains perched atop its hill, watching over Louisville like a silent sentinel. Visitors come and go, seeking proof of the unknown, but the stories remain. The shadow figures, the whispers, the inexplicable terror. You may wonder if the spirits of Waverly are real, or if it's all in our heads. But the true question is this: would you dare to step inside and find out for yourself?